And welcome to Health Talk from Marz. It's out of this world. In this episode, we're going to be talking about eating a rainbow color of foods from your diet to help you look younger, live longer, and healthier. So stay tuned. Okay, so you've heard about eating the rainbow from many health experts. That is to get as many different colors from your diet as possible. So there are 37 essential nutrients that we get in our diet: vitamins, minerals, macro elements like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and then essential fatty acids. 37 as compared to 10,000 phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are compounds that aren't specifically essential nutrients. However, to live longer, healthier, and look younger, you want to get as many of these phytonutrients as possible. So we're going to talk specifically about two classifications of phytochemicals. One is going to be polyphenols. Polyphenols is a class that includes flavonoids and non-flavonoid compounds, as well as lignans. And I want to talk about some specific flavonoids that will help you, again, live longer, live healthier, and live younger, basically. Okay, so let's get into polyphenols. Polyphenols include several different compounds, including flavonoids, non-flavonoids, lignans, and coumadins. And these are all compounds, these are phytochemicals found in food. So you want to eat a very varied diet that includes a bunch of these compounds. So let's give you some examples. So people don't realize even foods like buckwheat contain certain types of flavonoid compounds, one of which is called rutin. Rutin is very important with responsibility of taking care of connective tissue. Other types of these polyphenols would include quercetin. So quercetin, one of my favorite polyphenols, is a compound that's a very yellow, deep yellow pigment, and it's found in the skins of fruits and vegetables. And the benefit of quercetin happens to be one of the most potent compounds at stabilizing cell membranes, in particular mast cells. Mast cells are immunological cells that break apart when there's an exposure to an allergen. So when you have a condition like hay fever and you're sneezing and producing a bunch of mucus, your mast cells are going crazy. They're releasing all these chemicals inside. We know that mast cells can get stabilized by consuming a diet that's really high in quercetin. So in addition to quercetin, some other types of flavonoids would include something called ECGC, which is epigallocatechin gallate. That comes from green tea. So green tea is something that has been shown to be very protective against certain types of cancers. We know in Japan they have much less in certain types of cancer like breast cancer and prostate cancer. And one of the reasons can be attributed to the epigallocatechin gallate compounds that are found in green tea, which they consume quite a bit of. Other sources of flavonoids, as I mentioned, would be grapes, the skins of grapes, the skins of many different types of berries, such as blackberries and blueberries. There's another classification of compounds in them called anthocyanidin. Anthocyanidin is a purple pigment found in the skins of these various types of berries. So blueberries, raspberries, maki berries, salal berries, which are now growing wild here in Portland, Oregon, and the coast area. So these compounds have some of the highest value of what's called ORAC. ORAC is oxygen radical absorbance capacity. This is a description of the antioxidant potential of a particular phytochemical. So you can look up ORAC and find out which foods have the highest. Maki berry happens to have one of the highest ORAC values. I have not seen for salal berries, but they are extremely high as well. So when you're selecting a berry to get the highest value of anthocyanidins and the highest ORAC value, it's a good idea to look for wild berries. So salal berries, I mentioned, are wild. Smaller wild blueberries have more skin in comparison to the inside pith. So the more skin, the skin is what concentrates these flavonoid compounds, concentrates the anthocyanidin pigment, which is protective against damage by free radicals. Okay, let's talk about antioxidant properties. Let's talk about anti-mutagenic properties. Let's talk about anti-inflammatory properties. And let's talk about anti-carcinogenic compounds. So these are a classification of various types of inflammation that happen in the body that affect everyone. And so when we take a look at inflammation, inflammation is the root of all types of cancer. In other words, when cells become irritated, they start to produce certain amounts of inflammation. That inflammation over time causes damage to the DNA. Damage to the DNA then starts coding for cancer cells. And that is the beginning of the proliferation of cancer within the body. So another important aspect about antioxidant potential is the stabilization of cells, specifically cells that line the gut wall. So these cells that line the gut wall are responsible for keeping everything inside your GI tract. When those cells become inflamed, what happens is the tight junctions from those cells that line the GI tract start to open up and produce what we call leaky gut syndrome. So leaky gut syndrome is a phenomenon that happens whereby the cells start to get stretched apart due to inflammation, and as a result, certain compounds that normally would not get absorbed into the bloodstream start getting absorbed. So this can produce a number of different pathologies, including autoimmune disease and other types of inflammation that can happen in the body. So if you have like joints that are sore, if you're working out and you become sore afterwards, a lot of this is generated from these free radicals that you're producing. And that's why, we know that if you eat a diet that's higher in calories, what happens is you're metabolically more active in terms of breaking down foods, and as a result, you produce more of these free radicals. When you inhale smoke, that could be from cigarette smoke, could be from car exhaust, it could be from fires, and it's creating these free radicals, creating a certain amount of damage to the cells, a certain amount of inflammation. Over a period of time, if we were to inhale the smoke, eventually you would produce enough inflammation that you would start to produce cancerous cells. So you don't want to be exposed to smoke for too long a period of time. There's other things that can also damage your DNA cells, and that would include radiation. And so, again, that's known as leaky gut syndrome. And we know that phytochemicals, in particular quercetin, as I mentioned, epigallocatechin gallate, hesperidin, and there's citrus bioflavonoids that are also can be ingested, like limonene. Limonene is a compound that will definitely protect your cells against this leaky gut syndrome. Okay, so I've been talking about antioxidants and phytochemicals internally for the GI tract. Let's talk about more topical now. That would include the skin. So the skin is an area that is exposed to the outside, exposed to sunlight, which is ultraviolet radiation, that can damage the skin. So we know many people develop melanoma and various types of skin cancers. It's almost an epidemic. And one of the reasons is a lack of phytochemicals in the skin. So one classification of phytochemicals are called terpenes. Terpenes include the yellow pigments carotenoids. Carotenoids, as you can guess, originally came from carrots, but many other types of foods also contain carotenoids. Carotenoids can be found in various types of seaweed such as Donaliella salina. contains high amounts of carotenoid pigments. Spirulina is another great source of carotenoid pigments. So we want to include as many of these compounds as possible, because one of the things that we know is that carotenoids tend to get deposited in the skin. So in my patients that are traveling in the middle of the winter, let's say they're going down to Mexico or Costa Rica, and they're going to be exposed to a high level of radiation from the sun, ultraviolet light, I want them to colorize their skin from the inside out. In other words, get their skin yellow for a period of a week before they go down and get exposed to this higher level of radiation. So carrot juice is an excellent source, an easy source of cranking up your carotenoids. So you want a diverse array of carotenoids, not just one. So when you look at vitamin bottles and such, you'll oftentimes see beta-carotene. Well, beta-carotene is specifically coming from Hoffman and LaRoche, which is only one form of carotenoid. There are many types of carotenoid pigments that are found in foods. Ideally, you want to get a high or a big array, large array of these carotenoids from foods. Carrots, one of the highest sources. Spirulina is a great one. And various types of algae also contain high levels of these carotenoid pigments. Again, you want to get as many of these yellow colors as possible. And there's actually a device that you can measure on your skin how much of these carotenoids are there. So there's a couple companies that make these machines that can actually detect what your level of flavonoid is. And that would be something good to monitor, especially over a long period of time, making sure that your level of these carotenoid pigments are as high as possible for as long as possible. So vary the types of foods that you consume, and always look at your plate and see what kind of colors. Remember that even green foods such as kale have a certain amount of carotenoids in there. So green foods, that's why leaves in the fall, when they start to turn yellow and orange and red and pink, those are the other flavonoid compounds that exist in those leaves. And when the chlorophyll goes away, those other pigments show themselves more readily. All right, so the last classification of foods that I want to talk about are citrus flavonoids. Citrus flavonoids, lemons, oranges, tangerines, they all contain certain compounds, some of which called limonene. Limonene is a compound that's especially potent as an anti-cancer agent. But let's not forget also about spices. So spices is one of my favorite topics to talk about, because spices contain a wide array of flavonoids. So one type of flavonoid that I missed talking about previously was a compound called curcumin. Curcumin comes specifically from the herb turmeric. Turmeric is used extensively in Ayurvedic medicine, and turmeric has been found to be very protective against various types of cancers. Like beta-carotene and carotenoids, this coumadin compound can also colorize your skin. So using as much as possible turmeric is a good idea to protect you and make your skin look younger and be more resilient, especially as we age and we lose some of the protective hormones that normally protect the skin against oxidative damage. So you can make up for that by consuming a wide array of these flavonoid compounds, especially, as mentioned, turmeric. Green tea really important. You should be consuming that on a daily basis to get your maximum amount of these flavonoid compounds. I know this could be a little bit overwhelming when you take a look at all the 10,000 different phytochemicals found in foods, but what I'd like to talk about now is how you can get some of these phytochemicals by using certain types of supplements. So to make sure that you're getting the optimal amount of phytochemicals, because sometimes it can be really hard to get just from your diet, I created an antioxidant supplement called OxyQuench Ultra that has at least 5 different phytochemicals in there, unique phytochemicals that will protect you and your skin from oxidative damage. So you can look on my website, marznutrition.net. Until next time, thanks for listening to Health Talk from Mars. It's out of this world. Stay tuned for my next episode.